I'd like to welcome everybody to our Topics at 12 Small Business Seminar Series. We are very excited to be partnering. My name is Diane Sawyer. I'm with the Reidsville Chamber of Commerce, and we are collaborating with several folks on this who are also on the call, and that we are all available resources for our small businesses. So just really quickly, a big thanks to Susan Reagan with the Small Business Center at Rockingham Community College, who is the sponsor of this. Who is also on the call here with us. And then also we have the City of Reidsville Main Street Manager, Missy Matthews, has been helping us. Adam Mark, the Small Business Manager with the Rockingham County Economic Development Office. So we have been working really hard to bring you guys relevant information. And today's topic is the EIDL and PPP and all things ABC explained in plain English. Our presenter today is going to be J.R. Cecil, who is the owner of the Eden, Reidsville, and King Liberty Tax Services franchise. He is a wealth of knowledge, and he is one of a great friend of mine and a chamber member in Reidsville and the board of chair at the Eden Chamber of Commerce. So we are just really excited to have him and excited to bring this information to you all. Thank you all for joining us today. If you have any questions, I will be monitoring my chat, and you are welcome to send those to me. So without further ado, J.R. Cecil with Liberty Tax Services. Take it away, sir.
Hey, thank you, Miss Diane. I'll get my screen share going here. All right, welcome everyone. As Diane said, we're going to start off this first Topics at 12 with the accounting alphabet soup. SBA, EIDL, PPP, FTE. There's a bunch of acronyms that government and accountants love to use. So we'll be dissecting and explaining some of those today, hopefully in a language that all of us can understand. Again, myself, I'm J.R. Cecil with Liberty Tax. I've been with Liberty for 12 years, 10 of those as a franchise owner. As Diane said, I own the location in Reidsville, Eden and King. The Reidsville location I opened 10 years ago. I've been a member of the Chamber of Commerce ever since. I'm a member of the Chamber also in Eden and King. I love to participate with the chambers, and they always help me out and provide value to me and my business. So I'd like to welcome the Small Business Center and thank you for the support, Team Reidsville, the Reidsville Chamber for helping put this together. So yeah, we'll talk about the SBA loans. This has been a hot topic ever since COVID-19 has come around. You know, we had a stimulus for individuals for certain amounts, for certain situations, but they also provided some relief for businesses. And this is kind of a stimulus package for businesses. It's a way that they can obtain capital. It's a way that they can obtain funds to keep their business going, to keep their payroll paid, to keep their staff employed. So we're going to dig into the two biggest options. There are some other relief programs out there for small businesses, such as tax credits and things. But we're going to dig into the biggest topics that have been in the news with the EIDL and the PPP loans specifically. So we'll start out with the first one. The EIDL, also known as the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, it was the first one available to businesses, the first one that they could apply for. And my understanding is that this loan has been around for some time, but only in nationally declared disaster areas. So when COVID-19 came out and we started going into lockdown, the whole country and District of Columbia became a national disaster area, and everyone was available or made aware of this EIDL loan. They started taking applications for it. I believe it was April 15th, I think was the first date you could apply for. I'll look at my notes. I got it here somewhere. So in general, small business owners were able to apply for the EIDL loan. So the application that we did back at the start of this was a loan application. One of the biggest benefits of this loan was an advance. This advance was up to $10,000, and it was designed to come out very quick. They said within 3 business days. Some people experienced longer wait times, especially when weekends came into play. But those funds came out to your business very quickly. And then also something that we found out quickly was that the advance was based upon the number of FTEs in your business, or the number of full-time equivalent employees or staff members that you had. So if you had 5 FTEs that you listed on your application, you got $5,000 with the quickness. So it was designed to provide economic relief to the businesses that were experiencing a temporary loss of revenue or some type of financial hardship in some way, shape, or form. So that's important to remember as you're applying for this loan. The EIDL is for if you've had economic injury due to the disaster. So you don't want to just go apply for it if your business is gone, as normal, or if you're in the business of making masks and your business is booming. This probably isn't the option for you. You want to be able to prove, part of the criteria for this loan is that you want to be able to prove that you had some economic injury, such as loss of revenue. The EIDL loan was the hot topic. It was the first one that we were going after before the PPP loan applications became available. The EIDL was the only thing that we could go for. And so with that, they took a ton of applications. They gave out a ton of grants, and then they stopped taking applications for a short time. If you didn't see it in the news, it was not announced very loudly. But as of June 15th, the SBA portal is accepting new applications from small businesses again. They had shut it down just for agricultural businesses for a short time. But as of June 15th, the SBA has woken back up the EIDL application, and it is anticipated to stop on June 30th. So when we're talking about these topics at 12 and we're talking about the series, this one is probably one of the more time-sensitive ones. We wanted to get this information out as part of our business, a way to support the businesses, that these SBA loans are available and for a short time. There's no guarantee that they will be extended past June 30th. And I've heard that date is for both loan applications. The EIDL and the PPP are both set to expire June 30th. So that's next week. And with the EIDL, something to keep in mind with it, where it says the SBA portal. The SBA portal is where you need to go and apply for your EIDL loan. The SBA portal is the one place that you can apply for that EIDL. If you go somewhere else, I think there are some people that are helping support this, but you don't have to. The SBA portal is easy to use. I was able to help navigate a couple people through it, including for my own business. The SBA portal is the place to apply for the EIDL. So anybody who has already submitted your application, the SBA has continued to go through the process, and they're processing those loans on a first come, first serve. They are working pretty quickly processing those loans. So be patient. I would imagine that you'll see your loan application. Watch your inbox. They communicate through email. You have a window that you need to accept the loan. So when you initially apply for the EIDL, that confirmation email happens within a few days. That grant is then funded to you if qualified. And then a few weeks later, even a couple months later, you'll get an email inviting you to apply or to finish your application for the loan. They'll give you the dollar amount that you can ask for. You'll verify your information, submit some other documents potentially, and then be able to get approved or declined for that loan. Now, it is important to remember that the advance, the up to $10,000, that is not to be repaid under any circumstance except for fraud. If you are frauding, then they will ask for that money back. But under any other circumstance, any other normal business that is qualified to apply for the EIDL, you are welcome to keep your advance. All right, so PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. This one is, just as it says, designed to help protect your payroll, or to protect or to give you funds to help cover payroll during the COVID-19 pandemic. It is important to remember that even though both of these loans cover similar categories, you're not supposed to apply for both loans for the same purpose. So if you're applying for the EIDL to help cover your rent, you shouldn't use the PPP to help cover the same rent. So keep that in mind. You don't want to double dip, so to speak. So be careful as you're choosing which loan or if you apply for both loans and get both loans. It is important that you track your expenses and use them for different expenses according to what their original purpose was. So the PPP loan, it is based upon your 2019 monthly payroll for most businesses. So most businesses, it was real easy. You look at your December 31st numbers, how much was in my payroll, divide it by 12, and then multiply that by 2.5 months. That was pretty cut and dry for most businesses, and that was the loan amount that you could apply for. There were some caveats to that if you're a seasonal business, or if you just chose to use a different time period. For me, myself, I'm in the tax business, so our payroll is heavier during the first quarter of the year. So there's alternate payroll calculations that you can use that can help benefit you, or it might hurt you if you did not use those seasonal calculations. So keep that in mind. There are some specific instructions if you're seasonal business that you can use an alternate method there. PPP funds were initially geared towards payroll. That was the whole purpose behind them. And when we say payroll, that's going to include anything from salaries, wages, vacation pay, any kind of sick leave or family leave. It can also cover health benefits and commissions. One word that I did not see in there was bonuses. So be careful with that as you're paying out your payroll. Make for sure that the PPP funds go to where the SBA has designated them to go to. So the PPP loan, and I'll go back and review during the Q&A. We'll go back and review anything that we might have missed or anything that somebody wants to look at. But for PPP, remember the payroll is what it's designed for. They also made provisions that it could be used on other items. This next one, mortgage interest, very specific right there. Mortgage interest, not your mortgage payment. So it'll help go towards the mortgage interest, or the interest amount of that payment. Remember, the rest of your payment is principal, and that goes towards equity into the asset that you're paying on. So they're not going to let you use it for the principal portion, but they will for the interest. For rent, you can use your full rent agreement. Also look at these dates, anything that was in place before February 15th of 2020. And what they did there, they wanted to prevent anyone from starting a business on, April 1st and obtaining a loan to fund their whole business through the Paycheck Protection. That's not what this is for. The Paycheck Protection Program is to help businesses survive during the pandemic, not for startup cost, so to speak. Also utilities, anything that you had in service before February 15th of 2020. So the ones to remember: payroll, remember it's not going to include bonuses from the way I read. Also mortgage interest, not your whole mortgage payment. but it will allow for rent and utilities, a certain portion of your loan. Originally, that was a 75-25 split. And then if you meet certain criteria, if you keep your staff to a certain level and you use those funds for these categories, up to 100% of the PPP loan can be forgiven. Diane, I'm going to jump screens, chime in if it doesn't change for us. We all good, Diane?
Yes, we are seeing
All
your
right.
screen properly. Thank you.
So this one is a compare and contrast. You can kind of see, this is the way I like to look at things, where we can look back and forth, see which one might fit you better. PPP information is on the left, EIDL is on the right. So again, just to recap, the PPP, it's for payroll and other operating expenses like mortgage, interest, rent, utilities. Collateral, there is none required, which is very beneficial if you have a service business like a hair salon. You don't have that you're renting the building. You may not have a lot of assets other than the equipment on hand, but you might need a larger amount. So without having the collateral component to that, you can apply for whatever payroll you need. Up to 100% of this loan is forgiven with approval. Like I said, originally it was a 75 payroll and 25% operating split. They just updated it very recently to 60-40. And then they also extended the time frame that you could use those funds up to 24 weeks. It was originally 8 weeks. Again, the amount for the PPP loan for most people was last year's payroll divided by 12 times 2.5. So your average month, 2.5 times your average monthly payroll for 2019. The terms of this loan, very cheap, very, very reasonable. 1% of anything that doesn't get forgiven gets financed out for 2 years. Or excuse me, the interest rate is 1%. On the unforgiven portion, and that's amortized over 2 years once the loan starts. They do give deferment the first 6 months. You don't have to make a payment. So 2.5 years later, before you have to pay that money back at 1%, is not bad terms at all. It'll help with cash flow. If you've ever managed or ran or owned a business, you can understand how good or how important cash flow is. The eligibility is pretty similar on both of these loans. Small businesses, nonprofits, sole proprietors, churches, farms are all eligible for the PPP. Deadline for the PPP, oh, that's another difference. So I said for the EIDL loan, you had to go through SBA.gov. For the PPP, you have to go through an SBA approved lender, of which there are many here in Rockingham County. Quick recap on EIDL. The EIDL, we're using that for working capital, which could be for some similar expenses to PPP, but it could also include some accounts receivable, short-term debts. One thing that they are specific on, and I know this when I called the SBA, is you cannot use the EIDL for real estate purchase or real estate improvement unless it's to rebuild a part of your building that was affected by the disaster. So like I said, originally the EIDL was for natural disasters like a tornado, a hurricane, or a flood. And so there would be people that needed to rebuild their real estate or their building. COVID-19 typically doesn't affect your real estate, so they aren't allowing you to use those funds for real estate from my take or from my conversation with the SBA. Collateral, EIDL is only going to require collateral if it gets above $25,000. Forgiveness, not a whole lot of forgiveness with the EIDL. They do give the advance up front, and if you don't ultimately get the loan, you get to keep the grant. It's also important, and talk with your banker about this one when you're getting the PPP loan, and and applying for your forgiveness, that grant is taken into consideration when you're looking at forgiveness of the PPP. So keep that in mind as a business owner, keep that in mind as you're speaking with your banker, that if you got the EIDL advance, that will very much come into account when you are seeking forgiveness on your PPP. EIDL is also up to 6 months of operating expenses. They are not going above $2 million. The PPP amount, I don't know if there is a cap on it. I'll have to go back and look. I don't think there is an immediate cap, but terms, a little bit heavier interest rate, but they're much nicer on the amortization table. For a small business, 3 3/4 interest. For nonprofits, 2.75, and that's amortized over 30 years. And I haven't seen where either of these loans where there's a prepayment penalty. So keep that in mind. You may not want a 30-year loan. That shouldn't stop you from getting the loan. Make the payments as you can and then pay it off as quick as you like. Deferment, EIDL, they'll defer for up to 12 months as opposed to 6 with the PPP. Eligibility is very much the same. And again, in order to apply for the EIDL, that is sba.gov/disaster. For your PPP loan, that's going to be through an approved lender, an SBA approved lender. Also wanted to recap some of the PPP updates that they did later on in the program. This was not the original criteria, but they updated. So they went to 60/40. You must use at least 60% of your PPP funds for payroll cost, and then 40% on the non-payroll cost, which recovered the mortgage, interest, rent, utilities. That originally was 75/25. But I think what happened is they heard a lot of need from the business community that with shutdowns in place, they weren't able to bring their staff back at a rate that they originally anticipated. And so these businesses weren't able, whether it's due to volume or due to local government regulations, could not open back up and could not bring their employees in, could not pay them for work performed. And so they shifted the cost a little bit, 60/40, 60% payroll, 40% for non-payroll. Like I said, was very important to those businesses that couldn't keep their staff due to factors outside of their control. This next factor is also due to that, in my belief, that instead of an 8-week time frame that you needed to use those funds, up to 24 weeks. I thought that 8-week was kind of tight anyway. If you remember how they calculated the PPP loan, it was based upon 2.5 months of payroll, last year's payroll, and then you had to use it in 2 months this year. So it wasn't just, you had more funds than you needed. If you were doing the same level of business, you had 2.5 months worth of payroll, but they expected you to pay it out in 2 months. Also, with closures and reduced volume, that would have been very difficult for businesses to pay out those funds within the 2-month time frame or the 8-week time frame. So they've extended that out to 24 weeks. I know a lot of gyms and restaurants and other businesses that have been affected by phase 2, phase 3, and lockdowns will very much welcome that, as they want to be able to pay their staff and use these funds for what they're intended. Also, when they're calculating the FTEs, part of the forgiveness is you need to keep a certain level of full-time equivalents or a certain level of your staff on hand. So they extended the hiring window from June 30th to December 31st, 2020. Extension of the forgiveness application. The bankers are going to want you to apply pretty quick for forgiveness. These SBA loans, they are guaranteed by the SBA, but they're on the books at the banks at a very low interest rate, and so the bankers will have a vested interest in making for sure that we qualify for forgiveness as quick as we can. So, but the PPP provisions gives us up to 10 months, and remember our payments are deferred for 6 months. So I would encourage you to go ahead and try to apply for forgiveness as quick as you can feasibly do. And then the extension of a maturity date. The PPP loan, originally I told you 2 years. They extended that out to a 5-year amortization. So that's the nuts and bolts of the EIDL, the PPP, the SBA. I wanted to add this resource, and if anybody doesn't want to grab the link right here, you can always email me and I'll forward it to you. This is a PPP loan forgiveness estimator. A bunch of payroll companies have stepped up, including Paychex. Paychex is a member of the local Reidsville chamber. They provided this link very early on, and it's so user-friendly. I've been using it to help monitor my business. You just go to this link and enter in your situation, how much of a loan you got, and what you've been using your funds with, and the number of FTEs that you've been able to keep, and it helps estimate how much of the loan you'll be forgiven. So I'll keep that up for a couple more seconds in case you want to write that link down. Again, I'm going to share my contact information at the end so that anybody can reach out if they have additional questions.
JR, I've also put it in the chat box to everyone.
Perfect. That'd probably be easier for people to grab it there. You can copy paste from the chat box to get that link for the Paychex loan forgiveness. I wanted to go back around. You're just seeing Diane and myself here on the screen today, but behind the scenes, we've had some big help with Susan, Adam, Mark, Missy, of course, Diane. Roy Sawyers is here, keeping us straight with the technology. But this is contact information for those of us that are willing to help out or help answer questions. All of us have our own strong suits. I'm willing to help with questions with anybody. And if you have any questions, feel free to write down my phone number. That's my office phone number, my work email. You have some other great resources for the county here. So I'll leave that up for a second. Just in case you want to do Q&A outside of this webinar. But remember, we are going to do Q&A here in a little bit. During that Q&A, make sure that you introduce yourself, as Diane said. So if I was introducing myself, it'd say, hey, I'm J.R. Cecil, Liberty Tax franchise owner, and my question is. So.
JR, we had a question in the chat box and you did go over it, but is there a great place to grab the resource for the rules on how to use the money that you received from the EIDL loan? And obviously you can talk about, you and I made a phone call together to SBA, but where can they find this information?
So I would direct people to a few different places. Of course, the SBA.gov would be getting that straight from the horse's mouth. So SBA.gov /disaster will give you the best details, and that's getting information straight from the horse's mouth. SBA.gov /disaster. Another source for the EIDL would be just picking up the phone and calling the SBA. That's a harder conversation to have, as they are very busy right now. There's a bunch of stories of people not being able to get through. I would encourage you to call first thing in the mornings, probably on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That way you get to call before people on the West Coast are waking up. So that's when I would recommend calling, first thing in the morning during the middle of the week. The SBA is going to be your source with that, as you don't go through a lender on the EIDL. And since everybody's situation is different, it's hard to give all the rules, and I didn't give all the parameters on today's webinar because everybody's situation is different. That's why we are putting out our personal contact information. If somebody wants to discuss their personal situation, feel free. Call my office, call any of these fine folks. But SBA.gov would be probably the best and first source I would go to. because once you find the information, you can print it out, highlight it, keep it with your records. You'll always have that.
And I have put that
Before,
link in the chat as well. So
thank you. Before we get into the Q&A, I wanted to put a plug in for the next Topics at 12 that we'll be having. That is next week, next Thursday, July 2nd. Same time. It is presented by Jeremy Heiler. They're going to talk about social media strategies for small businesses. As I've been kind of observing through this pandemic, the businesses that have either had or created a online presence, a social media presence, they have been winning. So if you don't have a social media strategy or don't have a social media presence and don't know where to start, this would probably be perfect. Build your client funnel, connect with your community, drive traffic to your business, to your website, can build some brand recognition, credibility. So go ahead and register for that one, similar to registration for this. You just go in and sign up. So, all right, I'm going to come out of the share for a second. And then we'll look at the chat. Diane, if there's nothing else, let's open up some Q&A.
I think that covers everything that I've been given to date. So yeah, I think you can open up for Q&A. Again, just as a reminder, you do not have to put your video on, but please unmute yourself, and we'll be monitoring that if you'd like to speak, and we'll just say your name and your business and ask your question.
All right, I don't see any questions in the chat. If anybody has any, you should be able to unmute yourself. Remember to introduce yourself and ask your question.
My name is April Blackstock.
Hey, April, I think we've met before.
Yes, sir. Owner of 241 Events. My question is, I'm trying to figure out which loan would be best for me, or if any,
Okay.
actually. I just purchased my building in February. I can't remember the exact date, but in February. I am my only employee.
Okay.
As of right now. So as far as like I've been paying utilities and things, as far as the mortgage is concerned, they have given me forgiveness until the pandemic is over with.
Okay.
So would this be good for me or no?
So again, I'm more than welcome. I'm more than happy to speak with you after this on there. But my first or my gut reaction would be, I would say PPP loan.
Okay.
I know you said you didn't have any staff, but with sole proprietors, the way I understand they calculate the forgiveness is based upon the profitability. So when did you establish your event business?
I did the actual business 2 years ago.
Okay.
But as far as the purchase of the building, I did that. As far as paying a mortgage and stuff, I did that in February.
Okay. Before February 15th?
I'm gonna have to go back and look. I can't remember.
Okay. Well, let's assume that it was before February 15th, because remember they had some dates with the PPP
Right.
that we needed to abide to. So I would say PPP funds, and the first thing that you look at, we'd probably need to look at your tax returns to see what profit you have shown the last couple of years, because
Okay.
the profitability from your Schedule C or from your tax return is going to be the equivalent of your payroll.
Okay.
So technically you are a staff member. You are the staff for the business. And so since you probably don't pay yourself on a W-2, they would look at the tax return and look at the profit.
Okay.
So just in general, if a business, say your situation, a lot of small businesses don't show profit in the first couple of years. And so
Right.
if that's the case, then I might change my tune on this loan right here and say you may not want to apply for it, and you may just, count your blessings that they've deferred your payments on the mortgage. But if you've got profitability on the tax return and the business or the building was purchased before February 15th, then I would say I would definitely explore the PPP. And that's one that we go through a banker for. So talk to your bank about your expenses on the application that you fill out. You need to list those expenses, and that'll help help them calculate the loan amount. So again, if you want to catch me sometime or shoot me an email, we can dig in deeper, but I would probably look towards PPP. That's just my gut reaction. As the EIDL loan, it's I mean, in the event planning business, I'm sure you've suffered some economic strain not being able to have people gather.
Right.
So the EIDL, yeah, it can help with some of the utilities and things, and some of your accounts receivable and short-term debt. I've even heard it can help with long-term debt payments, but yeah. So I'd have to ask more questions, have to look at it further, look at your tax return before I gave you 100% answer. But first reaction will be PPP, possibly EIDL, or you might be as good as you can expect getting some deferment on your mortgage.
Okay. All right.
Hope that helps. Yes, ma'am.
If you could, can I get your phone number so I can contact you, or email or something?
Yep. Should be on the screen now if the slides are moving like they should.
Okay.
Yeah, email would be best.
Okay. I'm writing, trying to do it fast.
You're fine. I'll leave this up for a second. That's my office number, and I bounce around between all three offices, so I'm not always there. So email would be best.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, just had a chat come up. And remember, the links that we've talked about today are in the chat. So where you apply for the EIDL loan, where you go for the paychecks, forgiveness calculator for the PPP, those are both in the chat. Looks like Tan from Pelham. Will the slides be available? I would think so. I would think we could get the slides to you, Tan. I know that this is being recorded, and we're going to have it available to pretty much everybody here in the county. It's going to be made available to all three Chamber of Commerces. So yeah, the information will definitely be available. If you need the PDF version, I think that could be easily taken care of.
JR, Susan, can you hear me?
Yes.
The slides will be available around 2 o'clock this afternoon in everybody's emails. So.
Okay. Yeah. So check your emails. If you registered, then they have your email on file. We'll be able to get those out to you. If you don't see it for whatever reason, Tan, shoot me an email. I can forward the PDF to you.
And Tan, this is Diane. You know how to reach me. You know I can get it to you or Missy. And also, when we produce this recording, Rory will insert the slides over all of the videos. So when you rewatch the video, the slides will be the prominent thing on the screen, as well as JR's talking in the background. So you'll also have that resource when it's finished.
Of course. Thanks for being here. Thanks for participating, Tan. We were hoping to have a banker on hand today also, but they came down sick right before the webinar. They beat me to it. I was going to call in sick myself, but we're going to have a banker on here to help answer some of the questions. They might have been good and helpful for your question, April, to help with the PPP loan and some more details with that. I'm pretty familiar with the PPP loan and how it affects Liberty Tax business, as I've helped some other Liberty Tax franchisees, but most all of us have staff. So our situation is a little bit different with the sole proprietor without anyone on staff. There's I would definitely have a conversation with your banker. And most of the banks that are taking the SBA applications for their clients are trying to stay exclusive and help those clients that they already do business with. So I'd probably recommend going to your bank that you already have your deposits with, and if you have any loans or lines of credit at a local bank, that's who I would source first, or that's who I would ask first.
And hey, JR, I was just going to mention we had this conversation earlier this week. So just for everybody listening, most of the local banks, and we even have some credit unions and banks that aren't in Reidsville. We have some even in Virginia. I mean, we have a pretty far reach, and we sent out an email and quickly got responses. Out of all my financial institutions, only 2 were still processing loans. Most people cut theirs off at the beginning of this week to help finish getting applications complete by the June 30th deadline. So to JR's point, if you are thinking that you need to be, applying for the PPP, you really need to reach out to your bank. And if your bank tells you that they are not taking applications, I would ask them for a referral, because several people asked me, hey, I didn't know anybody else was still doing it. So I have shared information across banks of who's still taking applications. And I know of 1 credit union and 1 bank in Reidsville that are still definitely doing it. So.
And I would encourage you to try to go local if at all possible. You know, our banks are also having probably a tough time. As this time of year, a lot of people are using their debit card and credit card, or borrowing money to go on vacation. People, anytime there's an economic crisis, we tend to hold on to cash and not borrow anything more than we have to. So in order to help the banks move right along, go to your local banks. Let's keep them in business. Let's keep them busy so that they can survive. So remember, just because they have money in the vault doesn't mean they have an endless supply of it. They need loans also. They need our help. So try to stay local if at all possible. But with that being said, there are a bunch of online lenders that are still doing PPP loans. So if you don't have any luck locally, reach out to me. I'll try to find a source. If not, there's some online options.
I would also like to add, JR, that since the banks are doing the PPP and the EIDL is straight through the SBA, that the chamber is a resource to help folks with that process. I have helped several, and I have one right now who's waiting on me after this is over to call him back because he's struggling. It is a very simple process, but especially if you're involved in a nonprofit, the questions seem to be a little trickier because you're not really sure how to answer. Please feel free to reach out to the chamber. And I know there are other folks too who have been through it on this slide of resources that could help you, but I'm happy to help people with the EIDL process.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions that we need to have for the in front of the group, again, this is our contact information. Feel free to hop out and or reach out to any of us. And also don't forget to register for next week's topics at 12. And with that, that's all I know, Miss Diane. If you want to go over anything else or close us out, back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, JR. I'm just going to give anybody that has any additional questions the opportunity, maybe even not about PPP or EIDL, but if you have any additional questions for any of the folks on the call, we're happy to take those. We do have the weekly webinar series that we are doing. Next week is social media strategies. We also have upcoming business succession planning. And also the series, we are focusing on topics to help small businesses. So I'd like to give you all the opportunity. Please, if you have a topic or a question that you think would help small businesses, please send that to us. This is somewhat of a result of COVID-19 and the pandemic, but it also showed us that we had issues that we needed to be helping our businesses with prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic has also heightened a lot of those things. So PPP EIDL went first because it was timely and that deadline is closing. Although it could be extended, we're going to say right now it's June 30. But if there are other things that we could help you with, we would love to. Thank you again to Susan Reagan and the Small Business Center at RCC for hosting this and being our sponsor of this event. Missy Matthews with Team Reidsville and doing the graphics, and Adam Mark, who has been wonderful to bounce ideas about what our businesses need. And he also represents the Western side and their Chamber of Commerce. So we have a great partnership between our chambers, and we're just trying to continue to help our businesses. So with that being said, you can register for next week's webinar the same way that you registered for this one, and it will shoot you an email with the Zoom information, and you'll also get a reminder 30 minutes before. So thank you all for coming. I hope that truly, if you have other questions or things that you need to ask us, you'll reach out to one of us.